what's happening? I'm Eddie, the Skinhead Gourmet. Today we're going to be making a salad of finely julienne green beans and wilted Brussels sprout greens. We're going to be putting a balsamic and raspberry reduction over top of it and making a tasty little bruschetta to go with it. Stick around. Oi!
Possessions I carried in my hand, a pack of cigarettes and something to drink. I'm not able to think.
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start my balsamic reduction, and I'm actually going to use a little bit of a white balsamic as well as a traditional balsamic. We're going to put these right into a pot at about a medium heat, and we're going to let these guys go for a little bit because we are going to reduce them. We're actually going to reduce the amount of liquid in there and reduce the volume that's there. And in with our vinegar, we're going to take a nice heaping tablespoon of some nice raspberry preserves. You're going to want to stir those in, get that as mixed and incorporated in there as possible, and that's going to help soften the tart vinegariness and bring a whole new dimension of flavor to the sauce. This will end up being our dressing for the salad as well as an accent to the bruschetta. So for the mushrooms that we're going to be putting into this, you're actually going to want to dice them up fairly small. Everything that we're putting into this dish we want cut small just for the sake of appearance and presentation, but you're also going to want these guys to cook fast. We really don't want to cook them so much, we just want to get them onto a low heat and soften them up. It'll almost give them a meat-like texture, which is nice for those carnivores out there that have a hard time eating a meal without some. One of the things that's going to bring a huge flavor to this dish is I have some honey roasted garlic. If you saw the second episode from this season, you saw how to make this, and just a tiny little bit of this, and much like the mushrooms, we barely want to cook it, just heat it up a little bit. It's going to bring out some of the flavor. We don't want to cook the heck out of it. Just enough to warm it up, release some of its natural sweetness, and help disperse that taste all throughout the dish. Alright, so you know that your balsamic reduction will be about done. It'll start to bubble up nice. If you put your spoon into it, it'll coat it nicely and start to be a bit thicker. And that if you give it a stir, there's going to be considerably less liquid left in that pan. This is a perfect place to stop it, remove it from heat, and let it cool down a little bit. Part of the salad is going to be our Haricots Vert, or French green beans. What we're going to do is we're going to cut them in half, and then we're going to cut them on a nice sharp bias, pretty much at a thin julienne cut. Now we're going to want to take some of these and put them aside, not cook them one bit, and we're going to just gently cook the rest for only a few seconds. We're going to have two nice different textures, and it's going to make for a very pretty presentation as well. So our Brussels sprouts, which is going to make up about half of the material in the salad, we're going to take it, we're going to want to cut the bottom off. You're going to want to peel off the first layer of leaves on it. We're going to discard those. They're going to be a little bit bitter. You can tell they're a little bit darker in color. But then once we get past those, we're going to want to get a couple of nice big sized leaves off of each one. We're going to try to keep them as intact as possible, leaving them nice and whole and round. We're going to put them to the side. You're also going to want to check your Brussels sprout. Any brown spots, impurities, or dirt you're going to want to get off. Now after we're done handling these, we're going to want to wash them just like lettuce. You might get dirt down into the leaves. So you're going to want to make sure you get all that out. But after we've peeled a few layers of the leaves off, we're just going to nice and thinly slice it. You're going to notice it kind of almost looks like a cabbage on the inside. But these nice thin little slices are going to be what gets cooked, and it's going to get tossed with the green beans. And this is going to make for a very tasty and delicious salad. You see, almost like little shredded cabbage. Now one thing I love to work with, and that's going to be great in this dish, is you're going to want to take a tomato, cut the top off, and you're going to want to get a couple of nice slices, and we're going to use those for the bruschetta. But from the top and the rest of it, you can cut it down, and we're going to dice it, which is going to make for a nice top for the salad. And since everything else is cut so small and fine, we're going to want to try to do a nice fine dice So it's not huge pieces of tomato with little pieces of green bean, little pieces of Brussels sprout, and tiny little mushrooms. But everything's going to be small and kind of intricate looking, which once you put it onto a plate is going to give it more of a fancy and refined look. Instead of just big clumsy pieces of vegetables, everything's going to be small and meticulously cared for. We've got a pan warm with a nice half tablespoon of butter in there. We're going to want to get our mushrooms in. We're going to want to let them sit for just a quick sec. While they're sitting, we can reach over, we can get our garlic and get that in. Now, as soon as the stuff gets in, we're going to want to move it. We're not going to want any of this stuff to sit for too long. You can put this down for just a sec and get your shredded Brussels sprouts, and you can get them working, as well as the bulk of your cut green beans. And we're just going to want to keep these guys moving around in the pan, flip them. We're not trying to cook them all the way, we're just trying to heat, get some of the butter in there, and mingle the flavors together. After just a quick minute of tossing around on the stove, we're going to take our mix of green beans and Brussels sprouts, and we're going to pile them onto a plate or into a bowl, wherever they're going to be served. We're going to let these guys kind of cool and rest for a little bit while we finish off the salad as well as the rest of the entree. I'm going to take the pan that we just took our green beans and Brussels sprouts out of. It's still warm. I added a little bit more butter, and I'm going to take my leaves that I peeled off the Brussels sprouts and give them a nice quick squirt with some lime, and there's a tiny little pat of butter in there. And these we're literally going to just have to warm up for a few seconds and very lightly wilt. You'll notice the color gets to a nice deep green, and it'll end up just bringing out a nice touch of the Brussels sprout flavor. And we're going to take them right from the pan and start placing them around the outside of our pile of green beans and Brussels sprouts in the middle of the plate. Now we're going to take a little bit of our diced tomato, plant that on top, let it fall down the sides of the salad a little bit, but we want to center it on the top, and we're going to take some of those cut green beans that we had set aside, we're going to sprinkle those along the top. They're going to give a little extra texture and crunch, and we'll keep these here until it's time to put the dressing on and serve the whole meal. So now I'm going to make the bruschetta to make a nice complement to our salad. I've got 2 pieces of bread. I'm using a Parmesan sourdough. You're going to want to go for something that's going to taste good. Sourdoughs are going to be very nice for this because they have their own heavy flavor, plus they can hold up to whatever you're going to put on top of them. I've got a little bit of butter on them. You can also use olive oil if you prefer, or if you must, margarine. And we're going to take and spread a couple pieces of tomato on each piece. And I also happen to put aside a few pieces of diced tomato, and we can sprinkle them in between, so we have lots of tomato all throughout each bite of this. Then we're just going to sprinkle a small amount of Parmesan cheese across the top. We're going to add just a tiny sprinkling of paprika. It's going to give a wonderful color once this is toasted off, and add a little smoky flavor to it. Other things you can add to beef up the flavor of your bruschetta would be fresh herbs. Oregano, basil, and parsley all work wonderful. You can also add a little garlic to make it more of a garlic bread. Or be creative and go nuts. Whatever you think is going to taste great is going to work for you. I've got my toaster oven preheated to about 400 degrees. We're going to put these guys right in on the rack. We're going to give them about 5 minutes, and they're going to be delightful. We're waiting for our bruschetta to finish up, so I'm going to take a little bit of grated Italian cheese. I've got a Parmesan Romano and an Asiago blend. We're going to dust just a small amount onto our salad. And we're going to take that balsamic and raspberry reduction we made earlier. Now, how you put it on the salad is up to you. You can slop it on there like you're putting ranch on a salad, or you can take a spoon, maybe paint just a nice thin line across it. It'll give it a nice elegant look. And you really aren't going to need very much of this, especially on this salad. It's just going to accent it and set off a lot of the natural flavors contained there with it. The bruschetta's done in the toaster oven. It's nice and crispy. And I'm going to lay a nice line of our reduction of raspberry and balsamic across it. It's not only going to make it look pretty, it's really going to set off the flavor of the tomatoes and the cheese and the herbs. And it's going to make a delicious counterpoint to the little salad we've created. And then we're just going to do some cuts, and you can be creative. You don't have to just cut stuff in half. Green bean and Brussels sprout salad with our balsamic reduction and our bruschetta. It's wonderful as a lunch on its own, or a great complement to many different dishes.
Nothing ever stopped them from running. Never stop thinking about what they're losing on their way. Have you ever felt your